This is Terrell Kearns. This is your mom, Penny. Jim McIlvain. This is Clarence. I don't remember Clarence's last name. All these people were members of the People's Temple, and they all died in Jonestown on November 18th, 1978.
To die for a dictator. Shoko Asahara, leader of the Japanese cult Aum. David Koresh, leader of the American cult, the Branch Davidians. Jody Mambro, leader of the French cult, the Order of the Solar Temple. And Jim Jones, leader of the American cult, the People's Temple. All four were dictators. They turned their followers into robots, programmed to obey orders.
恐怖政治というか非常に似通っていると思います。実際にあそこではグーという形で、教祖というものが独裁を引いていたわけで、それに準ずる信者皆衛兵のような形で付き従い、それに反旗を翻す人間は皆スパイという形で、まあチェックされ、そして監禁されると。
Cult leaders are outlaws. Physical cruelty, sexual abuse, embezzlement, even murder. They become fugitives. Tension mounts with media investigations and police inquiries. The cult leader is under threat. His followers defend him with body and soul, ready for every sacrifice.
People would kill me. Fanatics, people that revolve around tradition, that are not going to have their mind unsettled in regards to what they believe or how they feel.
Koresh had or designated 60 mighty men, and he used to say, now there will be people who will come and they will ask questions, they will want to hurt me. He used to say they want to kill me because of these women, because they're jealous of what I have with these women. They don't understand, he used to say. So the first and primary duty of the mighty men was to protect that secret.
External threats encourage a closing of ranks and unity among the members, even when the threat is invented by the leader.
Okay, this is the area or the spot just before a meeting on one Sunday night. Jim Jones was standing with his security guards. All of us heard some shots ring out in the distance, and Jim Jones falls to the ground. 15 minutes later, Jim Jones comes walking in the church with a bloody T-shirt in his hand. Says, I've been shot, but I just healed myself, and I'm going to be all right. And everybody inside starts clapping and hollering, Father, not realizing that he'd pulled a fake miracle and pulled the wool over their eyes once again. Jim Jones, because of his paranoia and thinking that someone was trying to kill him, had security guards, some with guns, some didn't carry guns, but they had to do 24-hour security around this building here, and some would sit on top with guns.
Naturally, in order to protect the leader, to defend the community from outside aggression, weapons are needed. In the name of the cause, the followers prepare for war.
He had tons of guns, even when I was there, and that was a year before the attack. I saw, and it might have been because I was small, because I was young, I saw a gun that was so huge, I thought it was like Rambo's.
In fact, the weapons seized by the FBI after the Mount Carmel attack were more suited to combat troops than an evangelist preacher.
Mount Carmel, as you can see, this is an extremely large weapon. It is capable of shooting accurately at about 1,000 meters. If you hit a person with this, there would be extensive damage.
Each person was given responsibility for a gun, just like in the military. They were taught how to take it apart. They were taught how to clean it. They always had to have the gun with them.
The Davidians even taught the children how to use firearms. During the Waco siege, David Koresh released 21 children who were all placed under observation in Dr. Bruce Perry's ward. Their first reaction on arriving in the playroom spoke volumes.
Every single child, including a 4-year-old girl, when they walked into that room, the first thing they did was walk directly over to the toy here, which was a toy gun that looked kind of real. They picked it up, did the bolt action, weighed it, did some stuff. I'll never forget this. 4-year-old girl does this, looks down the barrel, looks over at me and says, "This isn't real."
The older members play war games too, but for real. These AUM members are on former Soviet Union territory. The year is 1992, and they're here to buy arms. Assault rifles, hand grenades. They also want information about purchasing nuclear warheads and missiles. This is just the first step. A few months later, Shoko Asahara set up his own industry. Over the next few years, and often unbeknownst to them, the cult's engineers and technicians developed a range of chemical and biological weapons, testing mustard gas, anthrax, and botulism agents. All the experiments failed, until 1993, that is, when the cult managed to produce sarin gas, a deadly nerve agent.
目的は聞かされてないんだけども、教団はなんか不気味なことをやろうとしていると、それはやっぱり見て感じていましたね。ダイナーサティアの要するに稼働の作業中ですね。ちょうどその、ろ過する何かをろ過するためのフィルターの張り替えを僕はその時やってたと思うんですけども、ちょうどその頃プラントからね白い煙が流れてきましてね。でそれを吸った挙句自分自身死にそうな思いをしたわけなんですよね。
Leaks were common, and many members were inadvertently poisoned. Most of them didn't know what they were making. Only the cult leaders knew the truth. Asahara's cohorts explained the accidents by accusing the United States of air attacks. Any plane overhead was immediately suspected of dropping sarin gas on the compound. The followers were further convinced by the organization of passive defense strategies, like in wartime. The cult's engineers even acquired a sarin gas detector to sound the alarm. The guru himself denounced the so-called American attacks for the cameras.
もろに受け、その全ての過程を終わり、いよいよ最終段階に入っている。つまり死間近の状態に今あるのである。
The cult even went so far as to build an air purifier. Professor Nishida, a psychosociologist, explains how this device was used to condition the followers.
これは彼らがコスモクリーナーと呼んでいた空気を清浄する機械なんですが、本当に作動していたかどうかはちょっと分かりません。ただこの彼らはですね、自分たちこそガスの攻撃を受けていたと信じていました。その信じさせるための道具として非常に役立ってたわけですね。つまり信者たちはこういうものが あって、こういうものによって私たちは守られているんだと。そうでなければ外に出たらガスを吸って死ぬとか病気になるとかっていうふうに信じたんですね。
Within the cult, members prepared for the end of the world. Asahara ordered shelters to be built to survive the apocalypse. At this point, the apocalypse was a given. For the guru, its imminence was the main argument for convincing the followers that they no longer had a choice. To be saved, they had to obey.
この大預言者でもある麻原孫氏の預言者としての立場からのノストラダムス書世記解読はどんなショッキングな真実を私たちに提示してくれるのだろうか。
ハルマゲドンというのも、善悪最終戦争、つまり正義と、悪魔が戦って最後の戦いをするんだと。でその正義の使者とは自分たちオウム真理教であり、悪魔というのは、フリーメイソン並びにそういった悪の結社というか政府といったものであるという説明をしていました。
The end of the world was also announced by Jim Jones.
There would be a nuclear holocaust, that he would save us both from the nuclear holocaust, from the consequent starvation that would come, and from the racism that would come, especially towards our black brothers and sisters.
The argument was effective. To survive the end of the world, Jim Jones and his followers took refuge deep in the Amazon jungle. Their goal? To build a self-sufficient community safe from the final cataclysm. The Order of the Solar Temple followed a similar line of reasoning. In the early 90s, Joe DiMambro spoke more and more of the apocalypse. Here, too, the followers prepared for the event. The cult's farms became survival centers.
Après les journées de travail, on allait passer 4 ou 5 heures au sous-sol des résidences pour faire une résidence complètement, un abri anti-atomique, entre autres, et avec des réserves de nourriture, d'eau, tout ça.
On entretenait l'idée que des cataclysmes frapperaient la Terre, que la plupart des individus périraient dans des phénomènes tout à fait naturels et que seulement quelques-uns survivraient et que ce seraient les Templiers qui seraient les survivants.
And the leaders did whatever was necessary to maintain their followers in a constant state of fear, even forcing them to watch apocalyptic videos every day, sometimes for hours on end.
De terribles fléaux commencent seulement à s'abattre sur l'humanité, déjà en phase de putréfaction. Mais ces événements vont prendre une envergure que vous ne soupçonnez même pas.
À l'Apocalypse, il y aura de nouveaux cieux et une nouvelle terre. Il y aura des élus libérés de la souffrance.
Soldats de l'Apocalypse, accomplissez maintenant le grand œuvre du salut éternel.
麻原彰晃という人の予言というのは 100% 当たるというふうに私は信じてましたので、当然ハルマゲドンも起こるというふうに信じてました。そして私は武器を取って戦い、時によっては人殺しもやむなしというふうに思ってました。
there's going to come a day when we're all going to have to die. He'd say, "Are you ready to die?" And he'd ask people, you know, and of course, you know, well, yeah, you say it.
Yeah, I believed I was ready to die for the cause. This was God's will.
Death is easier to accept when it doesn't really exist. Cult leaders tell their followers that death is just an essential step towards truth.
La mort doit être comprise non plus comme une fin en soi, mais comme un processus de prise de conscience supérieure. Nous sommes obligés de mourir pour renaître.
Tout l'enseignement visait à faire que la mort n'était pas la mort. Donc, il n'y avait pas de souffrance, si on maîtrisait bien ce qu'on nous avait demandé de maîtriser, la mort, il n'y en avait pas.
Je voyais, comme tout le monde, qu'il y a une fin à toute chose, mais étant membre de l'Ordre du Temple solaire, faisant partie de ce groupe d'élus-là, que ma mort serait très différente d'une certaine façon de celle qui doit être subie par les autres personnes qui nous entourent. Ce ne serait pas une mort comme on l'entrevoit d'un cadavre, mais celle d'une transformation.
Jim Jones talked of a political act, of revolutionary suicide.
He didn't say, "I want you to kill yourself." He said, "This is revolutionary suicide. Step across the line. There's peace on the other side. You are doing a noble thing." So he distorted the semantics of the situation.
And he said, if we can't live in peace here, and if we can't live in harmony, he said, then we'll all die, and it'll be over with, and we'll go to a better place.
You actually felt that there was no other alternative. You were going to die anyway, so as he put it, why not die by your own hand? By your own hand, and cross over into paradise, which is what he tried to encourage them, crossing over into paradise.
On parlait beaucoup avec l'utilisation du mot passage, qui est passer d'une forme de vie à une autre forme de vie, mais sans avoir plus de détails.
Et je me dis, mais qu'est-ce qu'ils entendent par passage et tout? Est-ce que c'est quelqu'un qui viendra nous chercher par un vaisseau spatial sur une colline ou n'importe quoi? Pour moi, c'était un peu mystérieux.
Chaque fibre de vous-même a été préparée pour cet instant mémorable. Fini les doutes, fini les douleurs, fini les longues cohortes des souvenirs douloureux. Résurrection, résurrection, résurrection.
アルマゲドンが起きようが、あるいは死が来ようが、必ずや幸福な魂の歩みを取ることができるであろう。
The followers were prepared to die. Some were also prepared to kill. Against attacks from the outside world, the cult officially protested and claimed its innocence, denounced a violation of its freedoms and liberties, all the while continuing its clandestine activities. In 1995, Asahara and his cohorts were worried. The cult was under close scrutiny by the authorities. To divert attention, they ordered a sarin gas attack, which they would blame on a rival cult. On the 5th of March, 1995, 4 Asahara followers boarded 4 different subway trains in the center of Tokyo. It was 7:50 a.m. and the trains were packed. In an ordinary plastic bag, a container with a few deciliters of sarin. At 8 o'clock, the 4 men released the deadly gas and made their getaway. Within seconds, panic broke out. 12 people died and 5,000 were injured. The gas was of very poor quality, otherwise thousands would have died. Japan was in a state of shock. The police raided AUM headquarters, arresting Asahara and AUM leaders. The secret installations were discovered, as well as the guru's real intentions. The subway attack had been a mere rehearsal. Asahara had planned another sarin attack in the area around the Parliament on the day of the opening session in November 1995. The objective? The assassination of all members of government, all members of Parliament, the organization of a coup d'etat to take control of Japan, and, ultimately, world domination. Arrested and incarcerated, Asahara was brought to justice. In Waco, Texas, David Koresh had no intention of being brought to justice or of going to prison.
Koresh used to say often that he would never surrender to the authorities. He was very terrified of going to prison because of the child abuse allegations.
Wait on me to the day that I rise up to the...
Outside pressures were building on Koresh. He knew the end was near. He prepared his followers for the final combat with the outside world, with what he called Babylon.
Frantically watching the night, up above. The armies come, riding on white horses, fearing the night.
Koresh had prophesied some very dramatic things. We would fight in a war against the United States and Europe. Europe was the beast of Revelation. We would be defeated. We would be scattered. The Americans, as a joke, would capture him and crucify him as a joke. Oh, yeah, this guy is the Messiah. Yeah, we'll show you. Let's crucify him the same way, as a joke. That he would be dead for a specified period of time, which he wasn't sure. And then he would be miraculously resurrected, and all the faithful would be taken to him by angels. And then we would go on a destruction spree. We would start killing all the people who had persecuted him.
Mount Carmel settled down to wait for the final cataclysm. As the months went by and nothing happened, the atmosphere became increasingly strained.
I remember when I was there, even day after day, the same routine. You'd start saying, "Well, when is all this going to happen?" And we'd whisper among ourselves, "When is all this going to happen? Nothing's happening." And as each day went along and it didn't happen, his position became more tenuous.
Et là, le gourou est perpétuellement mis en accusation par ses propres adeptes. Et à un moment donné, il se trouve au pied du mur et est bien obligé de donner une réponse définitive. C'est-à-dire qu'il doit donner une preuve définitive et ultime de la vérité du message enseigné. Et là, si sa paranoïa est suffisante, eh bien, il va entraîner toutes ses troupes, et lui le premier, dans la mort. Parce qu'il n'y a pas de preuve plus éclatante que mourir pour la vérité qu'on a enseignée pendant des mois et des mois.
The American authorities suspected the Davidians of possessing illegal weapons. Koresh refused to comply with their summonses. He wanted confrontation. On February 28, 1993, the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, the ATF, tried to enter the Branch Davidian compound.
He was totally prepared. We had food in there to last us forever. I mean, we really did. And yeah, he would say, the time is coming, are you ready?
4 guys in, no one move, no one shoot.
For Koresh, it was the perfect opportunity. What better way to prove to his followers that his prophecies were right? Without hesitation, he opened fire. 4 ATF agents were killed and 20 more seriously injured. Koresh had now gone beyond the point of no return. The tragic outcome now seemed inevitable. The siege began. The FBI took charge, deploying all the military means at their disposal, including armored vehicles and helicopters, eagerly watched by the world press.
You get time. I know you're hectic, but we need to.
Waco became a media event, and Koresh a star.
He was loving it when the siege first happened and all the media descended on Mount Carmel and he was giving radio interviews and television interviews. He was in heaven. You know, that's what he wanted, all that attention.
What am I doing? What am I doing with all these children? You know, what's really going on here? Well, you know...
Koresh had nothing left to lose. In this video, shot by the Davidians and given to the FBI, he even showed off 21 of his children, proof positive of his polygamy.
I have are for a reason. And look... Where's Daddy's kids? Daddy have a kid?
Way before anything ever happened with the fire, way before, when they were sending out people and it was looking hopeful, I was getting really, really nervous because every child that came out of there wasn't his.
2 weeks into the siege, Koresh agreed to release half of the children.
I knew that there was something wrong, and I told my dad, I said, they're done. They're going to commit suicide. I mean, why else would he not save any of his own children unless he wanted them to die with him?
Weeks went by. Negotiations were at a standstill. Koresh played for time, and the authorities had reached deadlock. All America watched with bated breath as the leader thumbed his nose at the FBI. The Bureau had to act. On April 19, 1993, at 6 a.m., the order was given to launch the assault. An armored vehicle broke through the wall.
What the FBI did was exactly the wrong thing. They just escalated the syndrome of being in a fortress, and they confirmed David Koresh's claims that they were evil. But essentially, all they did was escalate the violence by that tactic.
This time, there was no return fire. Koresh had prepared a surprise.
Right here. You want board? You want it corner? Come here.
Fire broke out in 3 places at once. The police were surprised and powerless. Within minutes, the compound was an inferno. The fire department had not been informed of the attack, and the FBI agents could only stand back and watch the flames.
We were all going to die, and then we were going to come back, and we were going to be greater than anything, and we were going to kill, like, everyone.
The next morning, 74 bodies, including that of David Koresh, were pulled out of the smoking ruins of Mount Carmel.
L'univers a été produit par le feu, et c'est par le feu qu'il doit se dissoudre. Le feu pénètre l'intérieur de toute chose, il purifie, il consume, il brûle, il élève ou dévore.
Joe DiMambro heard about Waco with a certain bitterness. Koresh had stolen the limelight. In 1993, DiMambro had his back against the wall as well. His followers were demanding their money back, contesting his authority and expressing serious doubts.
Moi, franchement, je ne crois plus à rien de tout ça. Écoute, Albert, l'argent fou qui est flambé dans cette histoire. Je suis curieuse de voir comment il va mener la suite de ton affaire.
The police launched an investigation into the Order of the Solar Temple, and Joe DiMambro knew that his days were numbered. But he wanted to go out in a blaze of glory. In his own words, in a send-off even more spectacular than Koresh's. He would take his members to a new world on the planet Sirius.
Ceci n'est pas une projection vague et lointaine pour les générations à venir. Tout commence à s'accomplir pour toujours, ici et maintenant.
Il voulait absolument laisser croire au monde entier, à ses adeptes, que tout était parfaitement juste et qu'il n'avait escroqué personne jusqu'à maintenant. Voilà, on nous a fait prêter serment devant la rose et l'épée, à savoir si on était prêt à aller jusqu'au bout de notre mission et éventuellement à faire un passage.
In September 1994, Joe DiMambro summoned all the directors of the Order of the Solar Temple to Avignon, France, and told them that the transit to Sirius was imminent. The final preparations were underway. The last will and testament of the cult was recorded on videotape.
Nous sommes la main de Dieu qui modèle la création. Nous sommes le flambeau que le Christ doit ramener au Père, assurant ainsi un futur grandiose au cosmos tout entier. Nous détenons la clé de l'univers et devons en assurer l'éternité. L'étoile bleue, grâce à son rayonnement cosmique, transformera en un éclair instantanément les porteurs de vie et de la conscience lors du passage. Il faut maintenant se mettre en position fluidique pour que les transformations s'opèrent sans trop de souffrance inutile. L'espace est courbe, le temps s'achève. Vous, qui voulez voir et entendre, soyez ces témoins privilégiés. Notre cycle se termine, ces images sont révélatrices. Le silence exprime la plénitude et la solennité du moment.
On October 4th, 1994, 23 of the most faithful members joined DiMambro and Luc Jouret at their chalet in the Swiss town of Salvan. During dinner, they consumed large quantities of alcohol, plus sleeping pills, morphine, and curare. It's unlikely that all those present knew they were going to die.
Faire le passage. Passage.
The poison slowly took effect. One by one, the guests slipped into a deadly sleep. A few hours later, fires were automatically triggered in the 3 Order of the Solar Temple chalets in Salvan. Within seconds, the blazes raged. Early the next morning, the firemen discovered 25 charred bodies, including those of Luc Jouret and Joe DiMambro.
voulait partir, comment dirais-je, tout en beauté, quoi, si on peut le dire, le mot, quoi. C'est-à-dire faire croire à ce passage qu'ils avaient réussi leur mission. C'est ça, en fait, le gros truc. Je pense qu'ils voulaient absolument faire croire au monde entier, donc déjà aux adeptes, mais au monde entier, que c'était vraiment un passage.
That same night, 150 kilometers away, but still in Switzerland, 23 members of the Order of the Solar Temple were shot to death in another chalet belonging to the cult. These victims were considered as traitors and thus deserved a violent death. A fire was to have eliminated all the evidence, but the system malfunctioned and the bullet-riddled bodies were discovered. The death toll of that one tragic night, 48 dead, and it wasn't over yet. On December 15, 1995, 14 months after the first transit, a few miles from Saint-Pierre-de-Chérenne in the Vercours Hills of France, a group of Order of the Solar Temple followers were brought together in the middle of the night, all having received a mysterious telephone call. The message given was perhaps similar to that in the cult's testament.
Nous vous voulons libre de nous rejoindre, c'est-à-dire sans aucune contrainte, sans aucune pression, mais de votre propre vouloir. Nous n'avons pas besoin de votre sacrifice, mais de votre aimantation vers nous.
The message was enticing, the reality tragic. 16 people, including 3 children, were shot dead and laid out in a circle around a fire. The second Order of the Solar Temple transit had just taken place. It would be followed by a third in March 1997 in Quebec, with 5 more victims. To date, a total of 76 people have been murdered or have killed themselves. There may yet be more, for nothing or no one can prevent further transits to Sirius. And at the latest count, the Order of the Solar Temple had 565 members. Guyana, 1978, November 16th. On the right of the picture is Senator Leo Ryan. He has come from California with the press to visit Jonestown, a commune established in the Virgin Forest where American citizens are allegedly being held against their will in great despair.
No one had a positive attitude about the future, I guess I should say, what was going to happen, because all he talked about was death, suicide, dying, and this is the way we're going to take out of here. We're going to make a statement.
Jim Jones had no choice. He had to meet the congressman, and worse, the press. The visit was planned down to the last detail.
And he said, now Congressman Leo Ryan's coming, so for 3 weeks, every night they'd have a meeting, and you would be told what to say. You would be questioned. He would put the questions to you, and maybe that Leo Ryan or one of the newsmen would ask you, and to see how you would answer it. And he said, everybody has to be happy. You got to have a smile on your face. You got to tell them you love it over here if you're asked. You got to tell them everything's fine, and you wouldn't go back to the United States for nothing.
Late morning on November 16th, Ryan and his colleagues, the group of journalists, and a TV crew arrived at the airstrip at Kaituma, about an hour's drive from Jonestown, which they reached in the early afternoon. The initial contact was promising. The village looked clean and well kept, the inhabitants happy, and the atmosphere warm, almost childlike. Even the journalists' first questions did not break the spell.
Are you happy here?
Oh, I should say I am. I've never been any happier in my life.
You want to stay?
Definitely. I'm very happy here. It's the best place I've ever been.
And you?
I wouldn't want to leave here because I have, it's really nice here. And I have, got a good education here and got a lot of friends here. I like it here a lot.
A huge party was organized that night in honor of the guests, with food and wine, singing and dancing. The stage setting was almost perfect, even if the master of ceremonies himself appeared a little tense. At that moment, it was very hard to imagine that in 36 hours, almost every one of these people would be dead. The media still harbored some doubts, but Senator Ryan seemed completely convinced.
Very glad to be here. This is a congressional inquiry. I think that all of you know that I'm here to find out more about questions that have been raised about your operation here. But I can tell you right now that from the few conversations I've had with some of the folks here already this evening, that whatever the comments are, there are some people here who believe that this is the best thing that ever happened to them in their whole life.
The tide turned on November 18th as the visitors prepared to leave. The TV crew had received a note.
Last night, someone came and passed me this note.
Well, that's who we're talking about. He wants to leave his son here. If Jonestown's such a bad place, why does he want to leave his son here? People play games, friend. They lie. They lie. What can I do about liars? Are you people going to leave us? I just beg you, please leave us. Bill, we will bother nobody. Anybody wants to get out of here can get out of here.
In all, 11 people asked to leave, including the family of Jerry Ferret. He asked Senator Ryan for help, despite pressure from Jones.
We'd been held prisoner there for 7.5 months. And about that time, Jim Jones walks up and says, please don't go home with them. Now, it said wait for a week or two. It says, I'll give you your passports. I'll give you $5,000 if you don't leave with these people.
Jerry, like the others, refused to give in, out of courage or fear. They were all too aware of the treatment reserved for deserters.
Yeah, I know there is. I know there always will be a person. I have no problem with it. Even some that have lied, they've come back. You know, I think I pretty well proved where I stand. I'm a forgiving person, but just watch those people that call themselves treason and commission.
For all of them, this departure was their last chance. For Jim Jones, their leaving could have disastrous consequences.
He walks over, sits down on the bench, and just sits there in a stooped position with a dejected look on his face. And I'll never forget it. I can still see it. I thought, for the first time, he's a beaten man. He's got nowhere to turn, nowhere to go.
A few minutes later, Jerry, his family, and the others left Jonestown.
Bonnie Simon, please come to the radio room.
And headed for the waiting planes at Kaituma Airport. As they boarded, the tension eased. The danger seemed to have passed. But then, all hell broke loose. Concealed in a tractor-trailer, men from the cult suddenly opened fire.
I had just sit down in my seat and fastened the seat buckle. I hear my mom, they start firing at us. As they start firing and the bullets start flying around, I bend over and trying to get my seatbelt off, and I can't get it unhooked for some reason. And I finally get it. I hear my mom scream, look at Patty, which was my wife. I turn back and look, and the whole top part of her head's gone.
Senator Ryan was killed instantly, as were several journalists. In all, 11 people were killed and 4 wounded. For Jim Jones, the point of no return had finally been crossed.
About the same time this was taking place in Jonestown, they started a suicide thing.
The congressman was dead. You know, he knew he was going down, you know. He was lost. I imagine the depth of his despair and hopelessness was something that few people can imagine. The weather grew dark and the wind kicked up. And there was, you know, of course, fear. I mean, real fear of the outside world. And I'm sure many perceived a threat against them, and that people were going to come and take them away and they'd be separated from their children. And that some believed what my father, especially right at that moment, because they were so broken and so weakened psychologically, you know.
Mid-afternoon on November 18th, Jim Jones gathered all the followers under the central pavilion and ordered a revolutionary suicide. A great punch laced with cyanide was passed round. Those who tried to resist were injected with poison, as were the babies. The babies were the first victims.
The children were to die first, okay? So now you've got a baby dying on the floor there in front of you. So I can't imagine what it would be like to see that baby die, you know? And then, so how do you run out on that baby? How do you leave that baby behind? So I don't believe that it was because Jim Jones says now it's time to die. You know, what Jim Jones says I do. I don't believe that for a minute. And I believe there were people there that did that. You know, and listen, you know, I don't know how many, I believe you know that people were killed. It was squirted down their throats. It certainly wasn't. There wasn't one baby that stood lined up and said, yeah, let me die, you know? So, you know, when 200 babies die, could you watch 200 babies die and walk away?
Die with a degree of dignity. Lay down your life with dignity. Don't lay down with tears and agony. Stop this hysterics. No way for us to die. We must die with some dignity. Please, for God's sake, let's get on with it. We've lived. Let's just be done with it. Let's be done with the agony of it. Let's get calm. Let's get calm. How many screams you hear, I don't care how many anguished cries. Death is a million times preferable to 10 more days of this life.
The Order of the Solar Temple, 76 dead. Supreme Truth, about 50 dead. The Branch Davidians, 74 dead. The People's Temple, 923 dead. These survivors have agreed to testify for only one reason: the hope of avoiding further tragedy.
Above Jim Jones's throne in Jonestown hung a quote by George Santayana that said, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." And if we don't remember the past, And we don't believe that we're vulnerable to cults, and we don't learn what the red flags are that indicate a cult. We face exactly what the denizens of Jonestown faced. We face the possibility of repeating the past because we don't learn from it.
Next week, starting at 8:30, a great nostalgic trip for bikers and film buffs. The documentary Stone Forever, followed by the film Stone, an Australian cult classic. 8:30 next Saturday.